Good evening and welcome back once again to the Clergy Cafe. Tonight we've got a double bill. We've got Father Peter and Father Peter. I made the biggest mistake ever of inviting two Father Peters into the Clergy Cafe at the same time. We're totally confused on who is who. But hopefully, as we go through tonight, we will get there somehow. Technology is on our side, we're hoping tonight, so keep your fingers crossed and keep the prayers going that we won't have any issues with the tech tonight. So, we're just going to get right on with it tonight. We're not going to mess about. The introductions. First of all, we're going to start with Father Peter Wright. Then we're going to move to Father Peter Sherricks as well. So, Father Peter Wright, first of all. Father Peter was born in Liverpool, and he says himself that he faithfully supports the Reds. However, we're not going to mention that again, especially if you're in Manchester. For many years, he stood in the cop singing and shouting for his team. After leaving school, he worked as a medical microbiologist, that's easy for you to say, in Liverpool University. And he supports the work of medics in checking the vaccine for safety of the German measles. Something quite incredible, really. Weekends were amazing for him. Going out with his friends, usually to the cavern, and I'm sure we'll hear more about that as we go on tonight. Father Peter, in his own words, says he had a life-changing experience of love of Jesus and spent more time looking into his faith while still being faithful to the cop. Eventually, after much dodging and weaving, Father Peter entered the Capuchin Friars, Franciscan order, and stayed there for 3 years. Again, something we will explore together later. However, he didn't quite fit. There wasn't quite the right making there. So Father Peter left the order and he went back to microbiology. Obviously not as Father Peter. However, he still felt called to something. And so whilst he was studying to become an RE teacher with drama, he explored that. And again, what he said was the hound of heaven pursued him. And so eventually he followed that calling and went to study for the priesthood at Ushoe College in Durham. Father Peter was ordained in 1988. I was only 4 at that point. In St Martin's in Runcorn. And he's ministered all over the diocese and has spent some years even doing my job back in the day. So, Father Peter's now in Runcorn and he's coming to us tonight from Runcorn, where he ministers at St Maximilian Kolbe. Is a growing appreciation for the simple, back-to-basics model or roadmap of how to build a community of missionary disciples, as Pope Francis calls it. So tonight, Father Peter is coming all the way, I've got to get the right Father Peter as well, all the way, he's there eventually, from Runcorn. Good evening, Father Peter, can you hear me? So, we've got you. You are on screen now, I'm on screen with you, and so we're going to explore some of your story tonight. But my first question from what you said to me was, you were born in Liverpool, but you've ended up in the Diocese of Shrewsbury. How did that come to be?
The family moved out from Liverpool to Runcorn in '76, so we were living here in Runcorn in what's still called the New Town for years before I had the sense of this call to a diocesan priesthood vocation.
And so you first tested your vocation with the Franciscans. Where did you first meet the Franciscans?
It's so many decades ago, I'm not quite sure, but I guess it was after I had this really powerful experience of the love of Jesus that I realized there was more to my Catholic faith. So I just began to be aware of what was being advertised, trying to buy some books to help me to learn a little bit more, to go on courses. And it was more or less the same time as one of the anniversaries of the Franciscans arriving in Great Britain. And I went to one of their weekend meetings and was really blown away by their spontaneity, their joy, their enthusiasm, and inevitably their simplicity.
And so you then went on to spend 3 years with the order. What was that like as an experience?
um, overwhelming, because literally you were with the other brothers 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And for the novitiate, you really didn't get out. Certainly for the first 6 months, you were on the grounds of the friary in Pantassive all the time. So at times it was claustrophobic, being used to do what I wanted and go where I wanted, but also learning a sense of a deeper community. And for sure, because of the many hours spent in silence in the church, I learned how to pray in the silence, how to contemplate.
Mm. I mean, there you mentioned that silence. I mean, the Franciscans have got many sort of values that they would hold strong to them. What kind of impact have they had in your life, even now?
I'd say that some people over the years have been taken by my sense of hospitality, and they've said, do you know the Franciscans at all?" And obviously, it shows that sense of always being hospitable to anyone that comes along, which obviously is very much grounded in the gospel. Hopefully, I've maintained in a way that's appropriate to here and now a simple lifestyle.
Because I mean, that simplicity is a big thing for the Franciscans.
Hopefully, should be, yeah.
Um, and I suppose, in a sense, it's that thing that simplicity allows you to then sort of free yourself in order to make that relationship with God. Is that right?
You're less preoccupied with candy floss, less of the fluffy things that society goes on about. I always find it fantastic when I have that dreaded visit to the dentists and you pick up one of the posh fashion magazines and you think, really? Is this occupying your life? This is giving you ultimate value and worth? And it's all gone and changed in a week. Um, so for sure, it reminds me that some people in our society are preoccupied with candy floss.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, I suppose with your relationship there with the Franciscans, does that somehow help you to understand Pope Francis, who's a big Franciscan fan? Does that help you to open up some of the understanding of him?
Initially, I'd say I wouldn't dare to say I could understand Francis because he seems to be such a complex, huge intellect, spirit filled man. But yeah, sure, his call for us to live a simple life, inspired by Francis of Assisi, very definitely the call to stand alongside the poor, which the Franciscans have done throughout their history. And the joy of the gospel was absolutely central to St. Francis. His community spread incredibly quickly right across Europe, and they used the tools that they had available to them to proclaim the gospel, to create small dramas, to write new songs, to perform the dramas in the marketplaces, calling people's attention to what the gospel of Jesus was really about.
Hmm. And you spent those 3 years with the Franciscans, living and working with them as well. What was that moment that you thought, no, this isn't for me? And what made you make that decision?
I guess it was about 2.5 years in, and there was a continuing feeling of disquiet that this wasn't the right decision for me, which is not to say there is anything wrong with the Franciscan vocation. It's just that it was not the one that I ultimately was called to. And I felt less and less comfortable being in the friary with certain approaches that they were taking. And I really thought I needed to make other choices.
Hmm.
So I asked to be allowed to leave with still 1 year of my simple vows in place
Hmm.
to run.
And I think that's the thing that God calls in different ways at different times. And I think that it's always a good thing to say you've taken that and dealt with it.
Yeah, I'm also really sure that we don't always hear what God is saying to us very, very clearly. Um, I thought I'd made the right decision. It was great for most of the time, but then it was do you know, this really isn't right for me. So we all have to, as it were, when you make a decision to follow Jesus, every time you get up in the morning, you have to make that decision new so that you're recommitting, you're sure that you are really following the Lord in whatever he's asking you to do.
And so, once leaving, you went back to microbiology. Um, what kind of things did you do there?
By that time, we were living in Runcorn, and a job came up. Actually, people hardly heard of public health before the pandemic, and now it's on the news daily. So I was working in a public health lab attached to Chester Hospital, and I worked there for a couple of years. And it was the delightful things of working through specimens that came from people who were unwell, trying to find out which, usually a bacterium was causing the illness, sometimes a virus, making sure our water supplies didn't have too many bacteria in them or they were infected in some way.
And you were involved with the German measles. How did that come to be?
Sorry, that's dancing about in time. That was back at Liverpool University. I just happened to be placed with one of the medics who was doing research into the vaccine, so helped him with the cells that we use to test the vaccine for its effectiveness and make sure that the German measles virus couldn't actually infect a host, especially a problem, obviously, for women who become pregnant.
Yeah. So we'll jump back in time again. Again, you came to that moment of questioning your faith and that sort of thing. What then eventually made you to decide, right, okay, microbiology is not for me, I'm going to go in this direction?
Um, the sense of there is something more, that you're being asked to do something more, Peter. For goodness sake, what is it? Took me ages and ages to suss it out. Obviously, looking into the Franciscans, and the whole series of times in my choosing to say yes to vocation, other opportunities came up. The department I was in had medics, it had Bachelor of Science students, it also had dental students, and we worked with all of them. But they were starting a new department for those doing a Bachelor of Science degree. And I was sufficiently well qualified, been long enough in the job, and everyone was saying, the job's yours, Pete. You'll become the medical scientist, not the medic, not the doctor. Well, it would have been a PhD doctor. You'll be the one of the scientists that'll be offered this post. And I was thinking, and I've just said, yes, I'm going to go and join the Franciscan community. So I could have had this incredible promotion, fantastic increase in salary. And the Lord was saying, there you go. It's a free choice. What are you going to do? I chose the Franciscans that time.
And I think that was one of the things we discovered with Father Tom last week was that sometimes we've got a plan, but I think God's got a greater plan than even we know.
Uh, and our life's journey is discovering this desire, the love, and the plan that the Lord has for us.
So, would you describe your choice to join the priesthood now? Would you have said that was a gradual unveiling, or was that more of was it like a lightning bolt that hit you?
I wish it was a lightning bolt because then you're 110% sure. No, it was gradual. I'd finished off more or less the first year. Then it was called Christ Notre Dame, now Hope. I had a fantastic time again, brilliant social life, lots of new friends, really, really having a ball. And there was this, and this isn't the answer. I was like, oh, for goodness sake, I'm going to be an RE teacher. You can't be asking anything else of me. But there was something, so I decided to approach the diocese. I was living in Shrewsbury as opposed to looking back to Liverpool, and got in touch with Father John McManus, who's a fantastic bloke, and he supported and helped me over the next 2 years to discern whether or not I was being called to diocesan priesthood. But it was, as I say, the hound of heaven, being pursued, as it were, by the yapping dog that you're going in one direction, and like a sheepdog, the sheepdog comes around and goes, no, there's another way. Oh, okay. Oh, this is great. I'll try this for a while. And then again, the dog kind of is there saying, there's another way. So
Hmm.
very, very gradual, uh, for a long time, a real struggle because I really enjoyed doing my degree and really enjoyed teaching.
Hmm. And now you've ministered all over the diocese.
Uh,
But currently you're in St Maximilian Kolbe in Runcorn. How many years have you been there for?
13 years now.
That's quite some time.
It is, it is. It's
and
quite a tough position.
and a big part of your ministry now in Runcorn is that parishioners are taking the lead in your parish. Tell us a bit about that experience.
Okay. I feel I've always made sure that the people of the church that they're fulfilling their baptismal role as far as possible. But you get better at it as time goes by. You realize there are more opportunities. And I know we're going to come on to it. I became aware of Divine Renovation, attended a conference in London, was utterly amazed by the things that they were encouraging people to do, enabling people to do. So came back, formed after a few months a senior leadership team. So that I was working with, at that time it was a married deacon and a lay woman who became our parish youth worker. But all the while wanting more and more people to be involved, engaging the parish council and making sure they were aware of their remit, their authority, and an encouragement for them to continue to fulfill their ministry as lay people without feeling they've got to come back and saying, I'm going to do this. Is that okay? You've been given the remit. You've got authority to do this. Yes, do it and come back and we'll chat and we'll see how it's gone. And then we'll reflect, was that the right thing? Can we do it in a better way in future? So it's always growing. It's always being reflected on and further discerned.
So there is a slight similarity to Father Nick and Father Michael, who we spoke to a couple of weeks ago, about their team ministry. It's a similar model, isn't it? But what is there specifically special about the Divine Renovation Programme for you?
Don't know what model they're using, so I can't comment on that. For me, it's the model that I realize can be adapted to any situation. It really, I'd use the phrase to you, it's like a roadmap. If you want to go off on a detour because you want to try something else out, it's not as though you have to follow this rigidly. Yes, there is encouragement to make sure you're taking the major principles, to have evangelization as an absolute priority, to encourage and enable people to have a living experience of Jesus. Because it was quite shocking when I read another author, Sherry Woodell, that the chief can say that within any community, any parish community, about 60% of people do not have an experience of Jesus, which kind of limits them in being able to really follow and increase their commitment to Jesus and their desire to be missionary disciples. So to make those absolute priorities, to use a tool that does bring people through into a new life, the Alpha course, which is a tremendous, simple, basic tool for evangelization, which has worked for us now 5 times, changed lives completely, allowed people to really deepen their faith, or for others to actually be baptized and received as Catholics.
And so, what successes have you seen within the parish with this?
It works. That's the first thing to say. It works. We have all, well, 13 years here, 11, 12 years in Wythenshawe. We've always had Bible study. We've always had something like RCIA, preparing people for baptism or reception. We've always used whatever other media is available, the cafe series, all sorts of things, with some impact, but using divine renovation, using Alpha, having evangelization as an absolute focus works. And people's lives are changed after or during each Alpha course. At the end of it, people are invited to just create a word from their table. It's usually a little phrase, and each and every time, the people on the table say their lives have changed phenomenally just by the sharing, by the prayer. At the end of the course, they're asked to reflect. How do they now feel about the experience? And it is staggering how people are touched and changed by the Alpha course. And it's been quite sad when I've been speaking about this. And do you remember when we used to have congregations at church in those days? You'd share with people that there had been a miracle when people had been prayed with, and parishioners would simply go, "Really?" And it's true. It's fantastic. People's psychological health has been radically healed. People have had physical healings, emotional healings when they haven't been able to get in touch with a son or a daughter for like 30 years. And now they feel they have the love and the strength to get in touch with them. Absolutely incredible that all these things are happening. And it's not as though my previous years have been wasted in ministry, but I've found the tool that works. So for goodness sake, I want to continue and develop the tool. Another amazing positive throughout, but in the time of pandemic, the resources and support that Divine Renovation can bring in from across the world is so life-giving and supportive. Because I think Chris is the same as me. I'm not even sure if Chris has got anyone else in the house. But I'm here, Billy no mates. But through the wonders of technology, through the enthusiasm and the work that other people are doing, you're refocused and re-energized. You've got new ideas. And an incredible experience of being prayed with by one of the Divine Renovation leads, Ron. He's in Halifax praying through Zoom for me, and it was the most wonderful spiritual experience. Absolutely profound.
And so, I think the one thing we can't deny that this pandemic has brought the world almost closer together through technology. And I mean, even your own parish, you've sort of, shall we say, struggled a little bit with technology, but you've got there, haven't you?
You're being very kind. You were with me just before lockdown, and your face was, "Oh my goodness
No
me,
comment.
this man knows nothing." Yeah, it's been a major struggle, but I've managed. I was given clear instructions. It was made simple for me. I can now do it. I can now use Zoom, which was, what the heck is Zoom? We can now do webinars. It's fantastic. And yeah, sure. Yeah, the WhatsApp group we have is also doing amazing things, supporting and further evangelizing within the parish. I've always recognized the power, but I've always had other people I could leave it to. But because we're in lockdown, I just had to crack on and do it.
Yeah. And I suppose that brings me to my next thing. I seen the other night you did a pilgrimage with the parish. That's right, isn't it?
You best qualify. A virtual pilgrimage through guided meditation. So leading people through their own imagination, through the spirit they have received, to go on a journey from St. Cuthbert's Cave in Northumberland to the coast and across the coast along the Pilgrim's Way to Lindisfarne, Holy Island. And again, the feedback from those who were on Zoom, but also those that were with us via the live stream, amazing comments. A sense of them being filled with the light of Jesus as they journeyed from Cuthbert's Cave. A woman had been to Lindisfarne 2 years ago, but had not had the depth of spiritual experience that the guided meditation brought her. It's just brilliant to miss you just yet again.
And you're a big pilgrimage fan, aren't you?
Oh, totally. Yeah. Obviously, Peter's going to talk about Lourdes. I've been to Lourdes many times under his very kind, benevolent guidance, but also over time, I realized that I wanted to do more active, practical pilgrimage. Excuse me. So I taught English to continental Europeans when I was doing my degree, during the summer holidays because we needed the money. And gradually, the Spaniards on the course said, "Oh, you must come to Madrid." So I didn't for a couple of years, and they were insistent, so I went. So this absolute love of Spain, because I could be there not as a tourist, but with natives. Realized the incredible pilgrimage route to Santiago in the northwest of Spain, and finally was able to undertake it in 2003 with another priest of our diocese, Father Mike McCormick, God rest him, he died really young. So we cycled from Seville to Santiago, about 850 miles. The best thing I've ever done in my life. Really, really.
I mean, I had the privilege of doing it as well. I did it on foot. So you were one of those people that kept shooting past us on the bikes as we walked along. But that pilgrimage experience is an incredible experience, isn't it?
Oh, it's literally overwhelming. Really, really is. The kindness of strangers, because I did the Via de la Plata, the Silver Way, there was very, very few on it. So I didn't whiz past and push any walkers over. But the kindness of strangers was overwhelming. We stopped in one place. We were in Extremadura, which is a really empty province, and we were just about to run out of water. Detoured to a village. Only the cafe was open. No, we didn't have any beer because we had miles to cycle, and they only had tiny bottles of water. I said, "Okay," took some, and we were going off, and he came out and speaking in Spanish. He was so embarrassed, and the shop is closed, and you must have these. Take all these with you. I said, "Okay, thank you very much. We will obviously pray for you in Santiago. Thank you very much. By the way, do you know the name of our church?" Obviously, I didn't. Santiago. So all these wonderful awarenesses, the ability, even though I was cycling with Mike, because a lot of times you're on rough paths, you were one in front of the other. Obviously, I was normally in front. And you just have so much time for stillness. You're in the beauty of creation. You're so aware of the undertaking that you are totally caught up of the God who was with us all the time. But because all the distraction are gone, you're so aware of God with you.
So is that where your love for tapas come from then?
Yeah, the lads introduced me over and over to tapas. And it's changed a bit even in Madrid. But when I started to go decades ago, you'd have these tiny drinks called a caña. It's only about a quarter of a pint. And I was thinking, what's the point? But you have many, many caña of a night. And you go in, you'd have a caña, and you get a free tapa. Just a tiny little plate to share between you. And then you're off to the next one. And it was a fantastic way of eating and having a great laugh with the lads, being introduced to others, being made a fool of, because my Spanish is pretty awful. But then wanting to continue that and share the experience back home. So I began to learn how to cook. Asked the mother of the two brothers in particular, Petra, how do you do this? How do you do that? And then the lads, as they grow up, learning, especially from Carlos, how to cook more tapas.
And rumour has it you're a dab hand in the kitchen as well.
You live alone, you got to crack on, haven't you?
So
do it or be hungry.
So we mentioned in the introduction the Cavern. Is a night out in Liverpool still as good as it used to be?
Who would know? I wouldn't dare show my face in the Cavern. That would be so inappropriate. But no, I'm assured by younger friends that I got to know during the youth service that, yeah, it's a top night. Lots and lots of good nights, yeah.
And are you still supporting your team on the Cup?
We've won, let's be honest, we've won. Is that an answer?
Time will tell. So, at the end of each Clergy Cafe, we're actually asking the same questions. So, first of all, what kind of car do you drive?
A bright red Mazda 2.
Well, that's the first Mazda we've had.
Okay, brilliant car.
What about the Pope? How many times have you met the Pope, or have you even met the Pope?
Never. I don't suppose you're meaning how many times have I been in a crowd of a few 100,000, maybe 3 or 4, including when St. John Paul came to speak. But no, never actually. I'll leave the ground there to Pete Sharrock's.
And what about your last holiday? Where did you last go on holiday before lockdown?
On Anglesey, went with two sisters and a brother-in-law to a place just outside of Beaumaris. It rained a lot, but it was great. Had a really good time.
And then finally, Netflix. Do you watch Netflix?
No,
I'm gonna have to change that question for the clergy because we're
it's
struggling with Netflix.
technology. It's technology. How the blazes do you do it?
So, Father Peter, we've asked you to prepare a little message for our young people. So, what would your message be to the young people of the Diocese of Shrewsbury?
I would absolutely say get yourself to an Alpha course. There's only 1,500 being run online at the moment. Don't miss out on this opportunity to have a new or renewed, a first time living experience with Jesus, and pray to the Holy Spirit every day. Very, very simply, just say, "Come, Holy Spirit, come into my life. Come, Holy Spirit, be with me. Help me, show me, open my heart to the heart of Jesus." But do that often, just like the rain on Anglesey, often.
So that was Father Peter Wright coming to us all the way from Runcorn. So we're going to now hightail it all the way from Runcorn to the opposite end of the diocese in Stockport, where we're going to meet Father Peter Sharrock's. So Father Peter was born and bred in Stockport, just up the road from us here now. And he was baptised in Our Lady's in Stockport and went to Our Lady's primary school, as did his parents and his grandparents before him. As was custom in those days, Father Peter was accepted as a church student at the age of 11, and he went to St Bede's in Manchester. And then in 1969, he went also to Ushaw College in Durham. He was ordained in 1975 back in Our Lady's, and he served in St Warburg's, Chester, St Anthony's and Wythenshawe. He went then to serve in a diocese in Kenya, which we'll come back to. He then served in St Teresa's, and was parish priest yet again in St Warburg's, Chester. And since 2006, he's now parish priest of St Peter's in Hazel Grove. Father Peter has served 2 terms as chair of the Council of Priests and did 15 years as the Lourdes Pilgrimage Director, and 1 term as the Dean of Chester and Ellesmere Port Deanery. He claims Stockport County is his team, and he's a big cricket fan, apparently supporting Lancashire cricket. It's great to have Father Peter with us tonight. However, I have lost his camera, so I'm just going to have to find his camera again. There we go. Father Peter, good evening. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
Good.
So, you were born and bred in the area, Stockport. Have you still got family in the area?
Oh, yes. My sister lives with me. My brother lives down the road, and all his kids, all 5 of them, are all around Stockport with their various families. So yeah, we're all still here.
So living and ministering in the same area you were born must be quite a luxury for a parish priest. Is it good being there with your family, with your friends in that sort of area close at hand?
It depends whether they want feeding or not. Yeah, it's good because we get to see a lot of each other, and that's nice.
And so, daily life at the moment has changed quite a bit, but generally, once the day is done, what kind of things do you enjoy?
I'm a big telly addict. I don't watch Netflix. I watch a lot. I mean, we've got to be quick because there's 2 matches on tonight. So it's the footy's starting again, so that's good. And then I think in a couple of weeks' time there'll be some test matches. So I'll be watching those.
So then I might change the last question for Netflix to what you're currently watching on the TV then.
It's either Sky Sports or BT Sport.
So you started studying for the priesthood at an early age. Tell us a little bit about that process and about what happened then.
Well, I was an altar server at Our Lady's, and I think it was Vin Davenport, God rest him, said to me one day, he said, "You want to be a priest, don't you?" That was at the age of 11 or something. So I said, yeah, cool, yeah, whatever. And so he put me in for the bishop's exam, as it was called. And I think there were 5 of us trolled over to St Anselm's in Birkenhead. We went twice, actually. Once for a written exam, and then the second time we were interviewed by the chapter of canons, or some of the chapter of canons, which I don't know what the hell was going on, really. These old fellas asking me what Our Lady had said, and I didn't have a clue, really. But anyway, it did help that at the time the parish priest was Canon Bell, and he was also the administrator of the diocese, because Bishop Murphy had gone off to Cardiff and Grazer hadn't started. So I suppose he accepted me. And because in Stockport I passed the 11 plus and they offered me a place at St Bede's, he said, oh, well, we'll take that, because it would save the diocese a few bob. I was done on the cheap.
And so this was called junior seminary, effectively, wasn't it? You went to junior seminary.
Yeah. There were quite a few priests on the staff at St Bede's, and we boarded there, so we only got home at holiday time. Yeah, it was interesting, I suppose. It's not the best experience you'd have, I suppose, of life, but we'll skirt over that. We'll get on to Usho.
Because I suppose that was the big question, wasn't it, for people at 11? It was hard to really decide that if that's that calling.
Yeah, I think I was the only one from my class who actually went on to seminary.
And I mean, it was quite a normal thing for young people to try, at least in those days, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, I mean, Usho had a big school. Even when I went in '69, there was still quite a sizable school there, and which eventually amalgamated with Up Holland and then faded away. But there was a place at Underley Hall. There was Woodcote Hall in Shropshire for the Sacred Heart Fathers. Christleton Hall in Chester was the place for the Salvatore. All these places had junior seminaries. The Mill Hills had Freshfield. You know, there was a lot of places.
It was more of a done thing then.
Yeah.
And so you had a better experience at Usho. What was the seminary life like for you there?
Well, I remember the first week we went into retreat, and the place was just covered in fog. I wonder what the hell had come to. But anyway, it brightened up a bit after that, and it was good because made some good friends, which are still in contact with, and we worked through it. I suppose in many ways it's a bit like an obstacle course. You get through it, but you've got your mind set on, and it's the whole thing is formation, isn't it? It's not so much. You're just being formed slowly by the Lord above all into what He wants you to be, and you get there in the end.
Yeah, I think an obstacle course is a really good way to look at it.
I had no road to Damascus experience. Sorry.
So, what would you say to a young person that's considering their vocation at the moment, to priesthood or religious life?
Think very carefully about it. I think a lot of people just dismiss it as not for them for various reasons, and you've got to look at it seriously, because I believe it's a very authentic way of life, and the other Peter does as well, and he probably had more of a struggle through to it because his ups and downs with the Franciscans and that, but it needs to be talked about and prayed about. And I think it's funny, I was talking to somebody today about something completely different, but he said the biggest problem these days is people aren't talking and not communicating. And I think if the idea of a vocation comes in, go and talk to somebody. It doesn't have to be a priest initially. Talk, to somebody in the family or somebody you respect, somebody who's got a bit of experience of life, and just talk to them about what you're thinking. and it helps you to marshal your own thoughts about it, doesn't it?
And
It can be quite frightening to suddenly think, oh, is he calling me? And you need some way of discerning that, don't you?
And it's that conversation. You've got to talk to somebody.
Yeah.
And so your life as a priest has taken you all over the diocese, but also it took you to Kenya. How did you end up in Kenya?
Well, go back to St. Bede's. There was a priest there, Tony Grimshaw, who, when he left Bede's, went to work in Kenya for, I think he was there for 6 years. And while I was at Ushaw, I was able to go and spend 2 months with him, because at the time my sister was working for British Airways, so she got cheap flights. So I think at the time it cost us about a tenner return to go from London to Nairobi, which was great. And Tony came and met me. My sister stayed one night in Kenya and went back to work, and I spent 2 months there. And he arranged for me to go to a couple of other missions as well. And it was just a different experience, obviously. And I suppose then I got the taste. And then, after I'd been ordained about 5 or 6 years, Jim McGrath, who was out in Kenya, came home, and he did an appeal in Our Lady's. And when I was on my day off, one of the family said to me, oh, we had Jim McGrath on Sunday. He said he's looking for his successor to go out. You wanted to do that, didn't you? So, anyway, to cut a long story short, in October 81, I ended up in Kenya. Jim was there still, and he stayed until the February. And then I was on my own in a little parish called Manga. They say a little parish because there was only about 10,000 Catholics in it, and that was classed as small. And on the actual church compound, there was just me and the Lord. There were no convents and no hospitals and no dispensaries and no schools or anything. So it was good. And I was working alongside the Mill Hill Fathers, and they were very kind to me. Again, I made some good friends with them. And the social life amongst the clergy was great. We met 2 or 3 times a week. Because the great thing was, of course, nothing happened in the evening, because nobody went anywhere. They all went home. And we were the ones who had cars, so we could get out and about. It rained every afternoon, usually at about 4 o'clock. The short rains, it rained for half an hour, and the long rains, it rained for an hour. So basically, if you weren't home by 4 o'clock, you couldn't go out again until 6:30. The roads got you down because they were mud roads, and the number of times I've slipped into a ditch and God knows what. And, I came very good at changing wheels. I could nearly do a Grand Prix, changing wheels.
So what were some of the highlights for you whilst you were out in Africa? Obviously, the clergy be one of them.
The clergy were good. I suppose really it was there that I really got the understanding better that it's the people's church and they can run it quite well. Because obviously with 10,000 Catholics and sort of 10 churches or so in the area that I had to serve, and each one had its own little parish council, there was no way that you could be involved in everything. And, they did everything. They prepared the people for baptism, they prepared the kids for first communion and for confirmation, they prepared the weddings, they did everything, and then I just went along and did my bit. Bishop Gray came out to see me. That was fun. We took him into the game park, let him meet some lions and some elephants and some rhinoceroses. I don't think he was too pleased with the rhinoceroses, but anyway. And then Pope John Paul II came. They had a Eucharistic Congress, and the bishop asked me to be our diocesan rep to go to the meetings and that. And it was decided the Pope would do some weddings in the football ground on the Saturday, the last Saturday of the Congress. So each diocese had to produce 2 couples. Here's my little picture of me, and you can see JP2, and that's me there. And the 2 couples in the background were the couples from the Diocese of Kesey that I had to shepherd up to the Pope to exchange their marriage vows. So that's the nearest I've ever been to a Pope, but we didn't speak. That's his secretary at the time was John McGee, an Irishman who became Bishop of, I think it was Cloyne or Cork, somewhere in Ireland. But I think he came unstuck on something, he had to go. Anyway, there you go. So that's another story.
Safe to say that experience in Africa has really helped you in your ministry back home as well.
Yeah. The worst thing about Africa was trying to learn the language, because I think it was a language designed by a committee who couldn't agree. Everything had to agree with each other, and there were 8 kinds of nouns. I was never comfortable with it. I had to learn a list of sins so that I could hear confessions. And so I can commit adultery in all sorts of different languages. It's marvelous. But there you go. Yeah, it's good. But again, it was the People's Church. The People's Church.
Mm-hmm. And I suppose that's now then what you bring back into your ministry here in Hazel Grove, isn't it?
I would like to think so. I've always said that if I don't mind people asking me if we can do something as long as they're prepared to do it. Because and generally it works. They stop asking me now because they know they'll have to do it. No, if we've got to give people ownership of the whole shooting match, haven't we? And if they have ownership, they feel as if it's theirs, and they feel as if they belong, and it's their parish, and that's what I've always tried to do.
And I mean, one of the big things specifically for Hazel Grove is the number of young people that are involved in the parish as well. It's almost extraordinary.
Well, you tell me that. I don't know. I can't shake them off.
And it's that they want to come back, and that they're empowered to be involved in the parish and to take the parish where they want it to go.
You see, young people relate to each other better, and if you can get some good role models, they'll all be getting big heads now. But if you can get some good role models, then it works, doesn't it? I mean, you're getting too old for this youth work now, aren't you? Really?
You can see it. It's going grey and going bald at the same time.
Well, I'm certainly too old for it. I mean, you support them when you can, but really, if you've got some good youngsters who can be good role models for others. I mean, we've got Youth Alpha going. We've got a good Lourdes youth group. We've got a new one, which unfortunately has become a victim of lockdown, but it's called Pints and Praise. It's for the 18+ group, because there's a whole range of youngsters, isn't there, that we sort of lose at 18. They might go off to college, and you might see them at holidays, but there's nothing for them. And one of them said we wanted to start something. I said, fine, go ahead. So I think they were meeting in Wetherspoons, and it's basically just to meet. It's not, if there's any religious talk, then it's unusual. It's getting them together. And again, it's this sense of belonging.
Yeah.
that they belong to something bigger than just themselves.
And I think it's also about young adults wanting to be together, to make friendships.
Yeah.
And the link there is the parish, and I think that's something that Hazel Grove seems to be doing really, really well.
Yeah, yeah. See, years ago, people had all sorts of societies that they joined, didn't they? Belong to the church, but people don't join anything like that now. It's not just the church that's struggling. You know, the Masons. Nobody's joining the Masons now, or all these other groups. And so we've got to find some way of keeping some people together. And it's got to be informal, but a bit organised.
Yeah.
So as long as we can get people to ring round or email round or WhatsApp round or whatever they do and say we're meeting in Wetherspoons at 9 o'clock on Friday night, be there. Some will come some of the time, and some won't come. But it's there, and they know it's there, and they still see. You know, it's a sense of belonging.
Yeah. And this next question might be a leading question, but what do you see your role as a parish priest?
I sort of preside benignly over it all and taking the plaudits from people like it. You just keep a watchful eye over it all, don't you? And hopefully we gather them together on a Sunday for the Eucharist. And Hazel Grove's very good. They still come to Mass here. But we've dabbled in divine, what's it called, renovation. I don't think we've done it as wholeheartedly as Righty has, but I find it a bit too North American. I'm probably wrong in that. I went to one of these rallies it was quite funny really. I went to one of these meetings in London, and what's the fella's called that started it?
James Mallon.
That's the one. He was there, and the fellow that succeeded him as parish priest was there. So I thought, well, who's minding the shop? They're all globe-trotting. But Mallon's very good. He's almost too good to be true, I suppose. It makes you feel inadequate. That's the thing, isn't it? Well, I say we've dabbled in it, and in fact, I've got a meeting tonight with the team, so they'll probably shout at me now. But I can mute them all because it's on Zoom, so that's all right. That's the great thing about Zoom, isn't it? And parish meetings, you just mute everybody. What's my role is basically to provide the backup, isn't it? And pick up the pieces, and it's like you say, gather them for the Eucharist, and there we go. That's what I've been doing during lockdown. We have Mass, we stream Mass every day, and we stream the Rosary in the evening. I thought to start the Rosary would be a good thing at first, and every evening at 7 o'clock and 5 o'clock on a Sunday we say the Rosary. I didn't think lockdown would go on for this long. I'll have to start the rota soon.
It is incredible how this online technology now, we've discovered a new way of being church almost.
Yeah, you see, one of the things we've done is we always had tea and coffee after Mass on the 10 o'clock Mass. So now we have virtual teas and coffees. So they all come together on Zoom. They have to make their own brew at home, but they all have a natter, and some weeks they have to go in groups because there's so many of them. But it's a big social thing. We've also, as well as streaming Mass on church services, we've got we do it so that those who haven't got the internet can phone in through Zoom,
right,
on the ordinary phones and listen to Mass, and that's been another lifesaver for some people.
And I think the important thing as well is that essence of community is still there. Everybody's still coming together.
Yeah, they feel as if they belong, and they feel as if they have some sense of ownership of it. And that's good, because once they lose the sense of belonging, then they'll be off, won't they, somewhere else? And that's why all these little groups are so important. I mean, started doing the children's liturgy on Zoom as well on a Sunday morning.
Mm-hmm.
They do that after Mass. I don't know how we're going to fit it all in after lockdown, really, but it's going to be a nightmare. Apart from the fact I'll have to start getting up for 8:30 Mass again. But yeah, it's been quite an eye-opener, and they're like, just as lockdown was starting, the group said, we're going to have to do something for those who can't get out. So we've got St. Peter's Helpers, and they do shopping and all sorts of things. But it was all there. It wasn't my idea. It was all there, and they come with the ideas. They come with the ideas, and as long as it doesn't cost too much, I say yeah.
And it's that empowerment as well that is so important to a parish. It's important to empower those young people. Important to empower those parishioners to really go out there. So I'm going to change tact a little bit now. And Lourdes, you did 15 years as the pilgrimage director. Some would say you get less for murder these days.
That was fun. That was my little hobby as a travel agent. There was a time I had my own atoll license. Well, what happened was, it was in Canon Healy's time as director. We were using an agency in Liverpool, and they put this price in, and he said this is a bit steep. So I said, well, tell him to put another price in and sort it out. So they put a second price in for the same pilgrimage. It was dearer than the first. So we got in touch with Birmingham Pilgrimage, and they put us in touch with a man in Lourdes, Pierre Barret, and we spoke to him, and we costed it ourselves, and we saved about 200 quid a head. So that was the start of the pilgrimage office in St. Werburgh's, Chester. And then, so I was helping Paddy for a few years, and then he stepped down, and Bishop Noble said, it's all yours now. And in the year 2000, we had a double train, about 700 people, and we sold that out. And I said to Barret, I said, I need another train. He said, why don't you put a plane on? I'll get you a plane. So he got me a plane. And then, first of all, I got Merseyside trading standards knocking on the door saying I was running a business. I said, no, I'm supposed to be running a parish trip. Then when we advertised the plane, we got the atoll people saying, you've got to have an atoll license. But somebody's reported us. I know who it was. It was one of the other travel agents who thought he was going to get the business, and he never had a penny off us. It was great. He used to go through us and ignore us in Lourdes. Very Christian. But then we got this plane, and so I went and got what was called a small businesses license, which we could do 500 return flights a year. So there were a couple of years. We did the Salford plane as well. Because, that was good business for us as well.
So you've been a travel agent.
But you see, we actually got them going back to back, and we got Lancaster involved. We had 3 pilgrims back to back to back, which was saving empty legs, and it's saving us money. And we were keeping the price down, and it was good because it meant more people could come to Lourdes.
And I mean, for so many people, that Lourdes experience is a thing they do every year, and they love it, and it's such a good experience. What would you be saying to those people? Because obviously we're not going this year. What would your message to them be?
Start saving for next year. We'll be there next year. Some of us might be there this year. We don't know. We'll see when Boris lifts this daft, stupid quarantine rule and France will open up to us. Some of us will go, I think.
And what would you say to young people who have never been to Lourdes? What would you say to them who are maybe half thinking about going?
Give it a whirl, I'd say, because in Lourdes it's cool to be Catholic. There's no opposition. And it's not all prayer and rosaries. There's a lot of good fun in it. Well, you know. I
mean, it's a phenomenal experience for any young person.
Yeah. It combines prayer, it combines service, and it comprises a good social life as well. And they meet people, and they're also, again, part of something that's bigger than themselves. And the great thing is being part of an international thing. And I mean, the year we got Bishop Noble, that's one of my highlights. Bishop Noble, in his last year, I said to him, if I can get it, would you preside at the International Mass? Which is the one where all the pilgrimages come together. So he said, oh yeah, I'll do that, thinking it wouldn't happen. But at the time, I was chair of the National Directors Conference for Great Britain, and I was on the calendar commission. So I went to Lourdes twice a year, plus the pilgrimage, plus February. So that year, every time I went, I used to see a fellow called, what's his first name? It doesn't matter, Diaz. He was in charge of all these things. And I said, Bishop Noble, I said, it's his Golden Jubilee this year. It'd be very nice if he would do the International Mass. And every time I email them, I just used to say to them, don't forget Bishop Noble for the International Mass. And what they used to do was that every day in Lourdes, there's a meeting of the directors, and they would apportion things for the next day. So we get there on the Saturday, and the man comes in, and he goes through all the processions, who's doing what today, tomorrow, and on Monday. Then he looks round and he says, the Italians, meanwhile, have been arguing amongst themselves who was going to preside at the International Mass because they thought they would have it. And he just looked round and he said, it looks to me this week that the English are in the ascendancy, therefore Bishop Noble will preside at the evening Mass. And he immediately stood up, closed his folder and rushed out before the Italians could get back at him. And they all looked dumbfounded, and I just went, yes. And so Brian did it. And Joe Gray had done it. The nice thing when Brian did it was, of course, he was a Lancaster priest originally, and the director from Lancaster was a layman, John Baldwin, who was a knight of St. Gregory. So he led Brian in all his regalia, complete with a sword, which he'd spent ages arguing with security at Manchester Airport, saying he had to take his sword to Lourdes. Anyway.
And I think it's experiences like that for so many people, Lourdes is so powerful as well.
Yeah.
And I think it's safe to say it's an opportunity not to be missed if you ever get the chance to go.
Oh yeah.
So we could go on about Lourdes all day, but time's slowly ticking on. I'm going to ask you the same 4 questions. We've answered, I think, 2 of them already. But my first question, I'm quite familiar with this one because I remember one weekend you preaching about it. You're quite proud of your car, aren't you? What kind of car do you drive?
A Skoda.
And I vividly remember you preaching about it.
It's a new model, it's that good, eh?
I remember you preaching about it.
Yeah, I just changed it last June. It's a year old.
So, you showed us the picture before of meeting the Pope.
Yeah.
How many times have you met any popes?
Well, like right here, I've been in the crowd a few times. I've met. So I saw Paul VI. I saw this fella, JP2. I saw Benedict, and I've seen Francis.
Well, you're the first one that's mentioned Paul VI, so that's definitely one for the leaderboard.
Well, that's because I'm an old git. Paul VI was a great man. He will go down as the best pope of the 20th century because he led the church very wisely after the Vatican Council, and he got a lot of flack over it. But he was a great man. He was a great man. A great devotion. I went out for his canonization.
Right.
He was done with Oscar Romero a year or so ago. A lot of people went for Oscar Romero. I went for Paul VI.
So at least it's one we can add to the leaderboard for this one now too. So what about your last holiday? Where was your last holiday?
Oh, now I'll have to think about that. Let me see. Well, one always winters on the Riviera, darling. We have some friends who have an apartment down the coast from Nice, in France. So it's not far from Saint-Tropez, actually, but it's the poorer end. So we go there in January for 10 days, me and my sister, and some of the other family come out and stay nearby for a weekend. So that's fun. It's a nice apartment. It's got 2 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms and 2 balconies, and there's a spa round the corner.
Oh, very nice.
It's brilliant. It's a big spa. So we're great. It's great, and there's a nice walk along the prom. So we'll be there again this January, all being well.
Very good. And so we've already answered Netflix. No Netflix, but definitely lots of sport, especially tonight.
Sky Sport.
So, Father Peter,
and I've missed tipping point now, so I'll have to see the end of the chase.
So, what would your message be to our young people in the diocese?
It's very brief. Stay with us. Did you get that?
I did get that. Thank you very much.
It's based, obviously, on the story of the road to Emmaus, when the disciples said to the Lord, "Stay with us," and the Lord really says to us, "Stay with us."
It's certainly going to be my quickest edit for the YouTube channel, anyway. That's for sure. So, Father Peter, thank you for joining us tonight and sharing some of your story with us. And so, as we always do, we're going to go across to Birkenhead now. And Father Chris is going to lead us in prayer.
Hello and welcome back to my study here at St. Joseph's in Birkenhead. As we begin our time of prayer together this evening, let's make the sign of the cross. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. When we listen to the Gospel, it might be the voice of the deacon or the priest we hear, but it is Christ himself speaking to us. So let's listen to an extract from St. Luke's Gospel. The Lord appointed 72 others and sent them out ahead of him in pairs to all the towns and places he himself was to visit. He said to them, "The harvest is rich, but the labourers are few. So ask the Lord of the harvest to send labourers to his harvest. Start off now, but remember I am sending you out like lambs among wolves. Carry no purse, no haversack, no sandals. Salute no one on the road. Whatever house you go into, let your first words be, 'Peace to this house.' And if a man of peace lives there, your peace will go and rest on him. If not, it will come back to you. Stay in the same house, taking what food and drink they have to offer, for the labourer deserves his wages. Do not move from house to house. Whenever you go into a town where they make you welcome, eat what is set before you. Cure those in it who are sick and say, 'The kingdom of God is very near to you.'" And the 72 came back, rejoicing. From the moment of our baptism, you and I are sent out to share the good news of Jesus Christ, just like those first disciples. We're called to bring Jesus with us into every moment of our daily lives, not just on a Sunday morning. Let's listen to a prayer written by Joe from South Africa. "You asked for my hands, that you might use them for your purpose. I gave them for a moment, then withdrew them, for the work was hard. You asked for my mouth to speak out against injustice. I gave you a whisper, that I might not be accused. You asked for my eyes to see the pain of poverty. I closed them, for I did not want to see. You asked for my life, that you might work through me. I gave you a small part, that I might not get too involved. Lord, forgive me for my calculated efforts to serve you only when it's convenient for me to do so, only in those places where it is safe for me to do so, and only with those who make it easy to do so. Father, forgive me, renew me, send me out as a usable instrument, that I may take seriously the meaning of your life." So let's pray together in the words Jesus taught us. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen. Let us ask the Lord for his blessing. The Lord be with you. And may Almighty God bless you, the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Go in peace, glorifying the Lord by your life. Thanks be to God.
So, gentlemen, I just want to say a big massive thank you to Father Peter Sharrocks, who's below me, and to Father Peter Wright, who's across here, slightly to my left. A big thank you for sharing your story with us, and for allowing us to share that experience with you. You will be on YouTube forevermore, and as I said a second ago, I might have to edit some of it. And to Father Chris, who's on my left, a big thank you for all that you've shared with us as well. Hopefully the computer's recorded what I said before, because it was much better than the second time round. So gentlemen, a big massive thank you for tonight, to Father Chris for the series as well. I'm now just going to put myself back on screen, so now they can make gestures in the background. But yes, Series 2 will be coming. So please do join us for Series 2, where we will explore some different stories. We're going to take it a little bit further and look at more than just talking to the parish priest, but actually looking at some of the stuff behind the parish priest, like we've heard tonight. Things like the Divine Renovation experience, young people working in parishes. What is the experience that our lay people have got in our parishes, alongside talking to some of our clergy as well and sharing that experience. Now, don't forget that we are on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram, and there's regular stuff going out on that. Morning prayer every day and evening reflection. So join us as we journey through this experience. Yes, we are still in lockdown, but the end is coming. We can hopefully see an end to this, where hopefully Father Peter will get back on holiday. Whatever it be, wherever it comes, we're on social media, so please do join us on that. Thank you for watching this series, and we look forward to seeing you sometime in the near future.